Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. We're here in New York City. It's late December 2020, just for the record. Even though this might get aired, or you may see it, in the new year, 2021, or maybe further in the future. If I live so long to become an even older person than I am today, it might be interesting to know this is the year 2020 at the moment, the closing few days of 2020. And this is the oldest I've been up to this point. So, perhaps the same is true for you. Anyway, first things out of the way is my calendar, which I did to keep my sanity during this difficult time of the COVID crisis. I drew some pictures. This is a friend of mine, not a close friend, but a friend who came from Russia to America recently. He plays the accordion. And he was actually out here one day in front of the subway station at 72nd Street and Broadway. And I began drawing his picture, and I finished it later at home, added some color to it. And I've done 5 or 6 years of calendars, and I draw these kind of combination of surrealistic, impressionistic, Germanistic drawings and noodles and doodles, colorful things which look a little bit like Dufy or Chagall, or Monet, or Picasso, I've been told. And that's not bad, considering I never studied art. It's nice to be compared to the great artists of the world, of the generations. And I compose some music also to keep my sanity, and my music has not been compared necessarily very often to Beethoven or Brahms or Tchaikovsky, but if someone was to say my music sounded like that, I would be very flattered. So, this is my calendar. I think it's the 6th one I've done, 6th year, with help from various friends and associates. And that's the way it came out. So, I also did this year Spaceman's Adventure on the Planet Earth. It's a children's book. This little spaceman creature came down from outer space and basically is telling all of the people to wash their hands very well. And the spaceman goes to Italy and Russia and France and China, Korea, Japan, and notices some funny things, notices that they're changing the guard at Buckingham Palace, and he thinks they're changing their socks. And also, he wants to know if the Italians know that the Leaning Tower of Pisa is actually, if they know it's leaning so badly, and of course they do know it's leaning, but the spaceman didn't want to tell them because he didn't want to hurt their feelings. And it's sort of written for an adult to read the book to the children. So it's kind of a nice little book that just evolved from my art work. And some people said, why don't you put together a little story or a little book for kids? And that's that. So I'll play you a little bit of what I've been working on lately. I was just out earlier having a little pad thai food for lunch on Broadway between Amsterdam and Columbus, and my hands are cold, but I should play a few noodles or doodles on the violin. One of my new pieces I've been working on starts out like this. piece of it. So would anybody like to ask me some questions? I think it would be great to really bring the survivors together, like the musicians that are part of the Manhattan Symphony, which I have to conduct, and have them do concerts, show that our musicians are resilient and happy to make music again. And our musicians are from all over the world, all over many countries, many different religious and racial and ethnic backgrounds. And we play some great music which will sound really even greater than ever before, because we're so excited to play dramatic things. You know, I won't give away the secrets of what program we would program, but believe me, almost anything would sound very dramatic and very exciting. Believe me, it's much missed. And the musicians would really love to play. I think the audience would love to hear some live music. And I think that would be a nice way to kick off the return to normalcy. Perhaps as soon as this spring, if not sooner, we should be able to have concerts. And that's one of the first things I want to do. I'd also like to find a gallery here or there and show my artwork, you know, show my artwork and start to sell it. I haven't not sold many pieces over the years. I never tried to, but now I've decided to quit holding on to my artwork as little family members, but to send them out into the world and have them sold. So I think that'd be a good thing. And I could write something on the back of each picture, something to commemorate somebody, or to help, you know, maybe as a testimony to someone's sacrifice or generosity as a gift to somebody. I would like to autograph them, you know, like for some special meaning. So they're not just a picture, but, you know, a picture that goes to somebody. So for instance, this picture of my violin shop, which I closed also, would go to some musician, and this picture of, let's say, the boat, whether this is sunrise or sunset, it's an older person pulling the little boat lonely across the sea, would go as a gift to someone that may have lost someone that they loved, or just as a testament to continuing to go forward, even slowly, in a little rowboat. I would like to autograph my artwork and send it all over the world, and play music and send my music all over the world also. Have some concerts, some great concerts, to share the enjoyment of life itself. Well, my inspiration for the artwork is not always known. Sometimes it just comes to me, my hand starts moving. I'm like a medium. Sometimes I meet somebody, or I see something, and something's going on. Like, for instance, just today I was thinking, okay, there were people pulling down statues of George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and Abraham Lincoln, different people, they're pulling down statues. And then I thought, well, what's going to replace those statues? What do they want to do? So for some reason, I just drew a toilet on top of the statue, so that, I don't know what it really symbolizes, but it's kind of like, if you're going to tear down something, maybe it should be replaced with something else. But of course, that would be very controversial, and I'm not really in favor of tearing down all kinds of, you know, statues from the past history of our country, etc. And I notice a lot of people coming to America who love America. They've come from all over the world, and I've seen some documentaries on television recently where people had survived World War II or survived, you know, countries that were very oppressive, and they've come to America. So it makes me feel like, as bad as America can be and is sometimes, and the mistakes that America makes, it's still a great country, and we should be careful not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Which means, even though we have to correct some problems in this country, we shouldn't really start to hate this country or not appreciate the fact that many people died coming to this country and died protecting this country. And it's not that old. This country is only a few hundred years old, and I think it's too soon to pull the plug on this experiment, as they say. So sometimes I'll see a photograph or a picture or a movie or a person or a thought, and it inspires me to draw a picture. For some reason, I draw lots of characters which look like they're from the 19th century. And that, I think, is a yearning for a different era, a different time when they didn't have cars and things were not so fast-paced. Nobody had cell phones. And I liked horses and buggies, and clothing was made better, and things were made out of wood and brick. And today a lot of things are made out of plastic. So I think a lot of my drawings are inspired by a desire to go back in time or go create a different time that is a little more organic, where clothing and buildings and the interiors of our buildings are not so modern, so cold, so full of glass and steel. And sometimes I draw just to challenge myself. I'm trying to work on how to draw hands, how to draw the human body, how to draw lips or ears, and some of my technique is very weak still, so I just challenge myself. Okay, I'm going to draw a person eating an apple or riding a bicycle. And sometimes it comes out very goofy, but I don't erase usually anything, and I don't retake lines. And I found a long time ago when I erased something or changed the line, many times I destroyed the feeling of the spontaneity, I destroyed the feeling of the moment in that picture. So sometimes I draw for technical reasons to try to work on something, and it comes out funny, comes out interesting. And sometimes I draw because I really want to make a cartoon or a message or some feeling. And many times it's unconscious. Things come out looking like people I know or famous people, and I wasn't really trying to do that. So sometimes it just happens. I'm kind of like a medium.
Do you draw in the morning or at night or any specific time?
Well, sometimes I'm in the mood to write words, sometimes in the mood to write music, sometimes to practice or play a little bit of music. I don't like to practice too much, but I like to play music. Sometimes in the mood to draw pictures. Sometimes I'll do 5 or 6 or 7 pictures in one day. And sometimes I won't do one for a couple of days. I like to do something in the morning. Usually when I get up, I'm pretty fresh, and I'll draw a couple of pictures just to feel like I did something constructive that day. Even if I become busy doing other things, at least I've drawn a few pictures. And then I come back sometime later in the day and I see what I drew earlier. It makes me feel good, makes me feel productive. My biggest question these days is, do I color them in? I draw something, by hand. I drew some things today in a little notebook, for instance. Thank you. Today I had a new notebook. Where's my bag? I have a bag around here somewhere. But I had a new notebook I bought. I think the name of the place is what? It starts with an M. I went to a place called Muji, and I'm going to ask them if they want to advertise on my show someday, but Muji, I bought this nice little book to draw pictures on. You'll see most of it's empty. But today, I was sort of in the mood this morning, so I drew 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Here's the toilet sitting on top of the pedestal. I have to draw that better. That's a baby looking at pictures on the wall. That was me when I was a little kid. There were many pictures on the wall that I studied for hours and hours because I was a prisoner in my crib. So it made a big effect on me studying these pieces of artwork. So I did at least, 10 or 12 or 13 or 14 pictures. This one's kind of a nice one. I'm trying to draw a fat guy. But anyway, so I did, let's say 15 little pictures this morning. Now later I might color them in, or I might, one of my motivations here is just to fill this whole book up as fast as I can with drawings. That's kind of silly, but I'm looking forward to finishing this book within only a week or two. In the meantime, I do larger pieces of work at home. Sometimes I use oils or acrylic, and sometimes pastels. And once I get rolling, sometimes I keep going. I do notice that time goes by very quickly when I'm doing my artwork. I could literally lose an hour or two without realizing how long I've been doing something. And sometimes I work very fast, and sometimes when I have to color something in, I have to work very slow. And one thing I'm doing lately is I'm trying to finish the works out a little more complete, so they're not just left semi-finished or half undone and not so sloppy. I'm trying to be a little less sloppy. with my work. So this is all an aspect of things growing and getting a little better. Well, I'd like to do some motif-type books on certain subjects or certain styles. Maybe I would like to draw a book full of cowboys, or a book for children, or maybe a book a little more impressionistic looking, different sort of artistic themes or styles. Maybe inspired by certain great artists, I would like to imitate them or do something like that. But a sense of accomplishment is very important for me. So in this case, I don't need to hire lots of musicians for a big concert and help produce ticket sales and advertising. I just need a piece of paper and a pencil, and I can draw something. Or with color, I can make something very efficiently. And so I'd like to make some little booklets of different subjects. I think that would be fun. A storybook, I'd have to have the story, but I'd like to write the story. The only problem is if someone else writes the story, or I have an assignment to do something in particular, then I get a little bit self-conscious, and then my technique, I feel, is not quite strong enough, and I start to worry whether I can work fast enough or whether I'm inspired or not. So it gets a little bit complicated. But I enjoyed very much the Spaceman book, and I'm doing the membership book for a very big old club in New York City. It's 200 years old. It's 100 years old, I guess. It's the 100th anniversary book, and I won't mention the club's name at the moment, but there's some old dinner clubs, and they asked me to do some artwork for them, for their book, and it was postponed for many months because of COVID. The club is not even meeting these days, but I hope it'll come out fairly soon. Well, I had a very warm, sunny childhood in Corpus Christi, Texas, where I was born. My father was the music conductor of the Corpus Christi Symphony. He also conducted the Dallas Symphony when he was very young. But being able to run barefoot throughout the neighborhood, climbing trees and fences, I had a very sunny, warm, happy childhood. I remember being even in the crib when I was 4 or 5 months old. I remember being a very tiny little baby in my crib, the artwork that was surrounding my crib. I remember many, many things about my early childhood. They say that if you remember your childhood, you have a very good childhood. Usually have good memories, and your memory goes way back. It means you had a pleasant childhood. I certainly did. I loved Corpus Christi, and I loved the water, watching the ocean liners go by. And that's why to this very day, as a sanctuary, I draw pictures of oil tankers and ships going by on the horizon. I draw rowboats and sailboats. I draw bridges. These all represent change and travel and flexibility. These are all symbols to my own quest for change and for growing, etc., things like that. So my childhood was very, very, very good. My parents were not wealthy. My father was a musician, my mother a pianist, my father a violinist and conductor. But I went to many rehearsals, many concerts, and was very privileged to have that kind of a family environment. I have a twin sister and 2 older brothers, and we really all overall got along very well. And we had very dynamic parents, and we moved to Portland, Oregon, and Oregon was very beautiful. Portland was very nice, and had good times for Halloween and Christmas, and we had Jewish friends. We had the Jewish holidays, and Passover, and Yom Kippur, and we planted a Christmas tree in our yard every year. Very rainy in Portland, always raining a lot, but very beautiful flowers and trees, very green. I love the Douglas fir trees and the evergreen trees, used to climb them all the way up to the very tip top and blow around in the wind in the tops of the trees. Really enjoyed that very much. So I thought everyone had a good life, everybody was happy. I found out later that there were people who were not so happy and not so, well, didn't think the way I thought, and had a lot of baggage, lots of problems. I most likely have some baggage, of course, but generally speaking, it took me a long time to realize that people have their own way of seeing things, of course, and have their own problems and have their own complications and don't see life quite as pleasant as I primarily do. I'm generally an optimist, and I feel good about the future. But some people have been difficult, and some have been dishonest, some have been controlling, and you learn. Growing up, you learn not to trust everybody. When I was also young, maybe age of 10, 11, 12, whatever, the Vietnam War was going on, and I was afraid my older brothers would be mixed up in that war. Fortunately, for different reasons, they didn't have to go. Did not go to Vietnam, but it was a very brutal, terrible time for so many people, the Vietnamese people and the American soldiers, so young. They were 18, 19 years old, 20, and it was very, very brutal and very frightening. So that was part of my childhood, to be aware of that. So I consider myself lucky not to have been tempted to join the Army or to be drafted into the Army. It's quite a strong decision one has to make at some point in their life. It seemed at that time. Overall, though, I'd say it was a very good childhood. I enjoyed playing baseball, climbing trees, riding my bicycle. I still enjoy that myself these days. Coming to New York was scary. After 10 years in Portland, Oregon, a young teenager, I came to New York City, and I thought there'd be gangs everywhere and there'd be all kinds of scary people. But it was scary at first, and it was at a time when the city was pretty dangerous, and I had some troubles with being mugged or being robbed. But I did well. I survived and found it very exciting. Ultimately, became very calm and observant what's around me, what's going on around me. I joined the auxiliary police force at one point. I was an auxiliary policeman, and experienced many different things. I went to music school, went to Juilliard School of Music, and I ended up conducting my own orchestra in Carnegie Hall and taking tours musically to China, primarily 5 or 6 tours of China. Our last tour was canceled because of the COVID problem. And I conducted in Russia, St. Petersburg, for the Leningrad Memorial, for the, I think that was the 27th of January. I conducted in Italy and traveled many countries, went to Asia, went to Europe, and so music has been good for me. I've always studied, practiced, and performed music for many, many, many years, and that has made my life, for me, very different, very special. Gave me lots of opportunities,